We are about to dive deep into studio buyouts and the potential death of indie games and all of that stuff. With almost every big gaming corporation buying up their own little guys, if you will. I don't know if Activision Blizzard was ever a little guy, or if it was a little guy when it was bought out. It's easy to see why some folks are very worried about the future of competition when it comes to the gaming industry. Let's dive right into it in this week's Deep Dive. Doodle. Do that, Dandy.
Dilly dandy! Sheer pure doodlage.
Yeah, that is so much dandied. That got doodled so hard.
That was dandy. That was straight dandy. That was very dandy.
Well, guys, this week for the deep dive, we definitely wanted, as always, to be a nice little bit of a conversational piece, if you will, right? And so I just wanted to start it off with what out of all of these recent kind of big buyouts, or just a buyout just in your lifetime in general, has surprised you the most?
I think it was Sony that bought Bungie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that was pretty surprising. I've always thought of Bungie, for what they do with Microsoft, not what they do with Sony. But that is the Destiny provider, and I don't know. I felt like that was a pretty interesting one to see. I mean, honestly, the one that was really the most interesting is not even listed here. That was Wordle getting bought by the New York Times. That one was really interesting to see because that happened instantly.
Yeah. Yeah, corporate.
Little Nelly starts going off in chat right now.
Yeah, exactly. That buyout is probably the one that surprised me the most, because it popped up so quickly, right?
It seems so unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
It's a word puzzle game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the New York Times has always been well known for the New York Times crossword puzzle.
Exactly.
And so I think they looked at Wordle as an almost competitor to the crossword puzzle, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know what I do when I finish my daily Wordle? I do the New York Times crossword puzzle because I love word puzzles. I do both. Let me have both.
Well, now you do, and they now get.
I know, and I still give Rupert Murdoch all my fucking money.
Yeah,
it all gets funneled up, and I mean that actually leads really. I mean, Savage? Actually, did you have was it Wordle? Was your answer Wordle, or was that Dotson's answer?
That was my answer.
Yeah,
do you have a surprise buyout?
I guess not really a surprise buyout. But the honestly, the Activision Blizzard buyout, I feel like there was a very motive behind it.
Yeah.
And I think and we can get into that here in just a second. But I think the most shocking part of that buyout was the actual price figure that they can. I like any arena person, assume that Activision Blizzard come with a really heavy price tag because you have all the Blizzard IPs, you've got all of Call of Duty. And on top of that, upon acquisition of both of those things, many others, I am glossing right now. But you're, in a large way, you are taking competitive esports market, with the exception of maybe other huge giants league, and you're literally just it's like the guy at the table with the poker chips. You're just doing this to all of them. You're taking some of the biggest sports competitors. Other than League, now all belong under the same roof and same umbrella. That is a lot of gain. It is a huge amount. To got 68.7 billion with a B dollars. That's huge.
And what a specific amount.
It mostly just drives my OCD crazy that it was 68.7 instead of
I know, yeah, exactly.
7.8.
What a specific amount. If I was in that room, I'd have been make it 68.
Just round up. It couldn't be 69 billion.
But kind of in that same vein, what do you guys think about this consolidation and what it means for the, competition within the gaming industry, as everything kind of gets vacuumed up by these big guys, your Microsofts, your everything. I mean, Todd, Kevin made an interesting point in the chat. He said, I honestly just want Microsoft to buy EA to keep Mass Effect safe. So it's that's kind of locking that franchise in so that he knows it's safe for the long term. But is that still, what do you guys think about that for competition, this consolidation?
think we're very rapidly approaching the actual legal definition of a monopoly. Like,
yeah.
Like literally, I mean, other than independent developers who are still standing on their own two legs by some miracle or whatever, like you have Microsoft, and then now you have Sony.
They're the two big guys. Yeah, they're kind of like
that is it.
Heavy hitters.
I mean, and I feel like
Nintendo over here, like
they're to kind of just pick up the scrap.
Well, Nintendo is like, we've got the market cornered on making idiots pay $60 for games that look like they're on the N64. So we're good.
Full circle.
Yeah.
I think their big bag is we're going to continue to come out with some sort of gimmick. We're going to give you a gimmick every year, and you're going to like it. And I do. I like it. I like the fact that I can take my Switch from port to unport, and all that. Like, I love that shit, honestly. It's not... I know gimmick has a bad connotation to it, right? Like, people think, like, oh, it's gimmicky. No, I like that. Like, I like the fact that it, like, it has its little quirk.
You could call it an innovation.
Yeah, I guess I could call it an
innovation. It's just another way of saying specialized skill, specialized skill.
However, in PR we call that framing, which is another word for bullshit.
It's specified textual awareness.
Oh, there you go. This guy may be a comms guy.
There you go.
But I think definitely back to the question at hand, Dodd, consolidation. What do you think about it? Is it good for the industry? Is it good for competition?
This industry is getting to a dangerous place where the conglomerations of who has, the most money and power and stuff like that is starting to look like the wealth gap in America, right? Where there's just absolutely no fucking middle class. And so that's, I think, is very, very dangerous, right? You have some, I think, is Ubisoft still on their own, or have they got bought up by anybody yet? They're next.
Ubisoft, I still think is an franchise or an independent production company in and of itself, but like, can you imagine just having like seeing something you don't like in a competitive market, and then just like throw almost $70 billion at it, and it's not your problem?
Yeah, I mean, that's a way to solve it. And when you get to this point of, I mean, we talked about the console war for a long time. Honestly, the last time we had a deep dive on the console war, we talked about, is there even a console war, right? Nintendo seems to be playing its own ball game, and as we said, they've already gotten, people paying $60 for a game that should have come out on an N64, according to Jake over here.
Okay, and we're back. Yeah. Technical difficulties are always fun. It turns out the big guys don't like it when you fucking talk about them. Mm-hmm. We're going to keep
Especially Microsoft.
We're going to keep talking about them.
Not speaking through a Microsoft proprietary conversation software right now or anything.
And then talking shit about Microsoft. They're like, hey,
right.
Shut it down. Cut those guys out. Fuck them up. But we are talking about mergers, big buyouts, what it means for indie games. And Dot, I think you were just kind of going into it on what you thought about how this consolidation of the market, these Activision Blizzard buyouts, these huge moves by the gaming industry. You were just kind of giving us a spiel on what you thought that meant for competition.
Yeah, we're really starting to get a big divide in the competition where you have nothing but the giant companies and then these small indie developers. And I think it's going to be nothing but like, Microsoft or Yacht Club. And like, I think that that's not good for the game industry as a whole. I think that, it's kind of like, for the same reason you need a middle class in the economy, you need that kind of mid-tier within the gaming industry to kind of spur competition and then, have something that really is attainable. And then, basically it just makes it so that,
capitalism back when it used to work.
Right. And it also like it just creates this huge gap of like, it creates a huge success gap, right? Where you have to hit like Inner Sloth level, Among Us level kind of status with the game and monetize on it right at the apex of whatever that curve is in order to be able to be successful in the game industry at all. Or else you're just going to be competing with everything else that Microsoft and Sony's been putting out. And I think that's not a good. I think that's not a healthy place for the industry to be as a whole.
No, not at all. Not at all. Savage, anything to add as far as the consolidation and what it means for competition?
I think it's going to be insanely difficult, and I feel like what the conversation start happening with some smaller developers is that, like, if I were an independent developer, all of a sudden the metric is starting to change over what you call like an actual measurable commercial success. And let's face it, in this industry, that's like money earned at this point. So it starts to be a point where it's like, hope that you be highly commercially successful on an individual title or series of titles, or start to hope that you just kind of make something good enough to be threatening and hope someone gives you a lot of money and buys you out. And I think that is A, incredibly toxic, and B, I feel like it's really harmful psychologically, like small-time developers and creatives, because it's then suddenly either someone buys me or my products, and I don't like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And we do have a poll going right now on who shut down the stream. If you want to vote in that real quick, like it is a couple of corporate daddies. You can vote for those.
Rupert Murdoch, because I talk shit about New York.
I think it's NYC.
I said Rupert Murdoch. I called him out specifically, and his niece is probably now managing.
Push button. That's a Rupert Murdoch.
He shuts down the internet immediately.
Yeah. Boom.
Awesome.
Oh, it's a 50-50 tie.
Oh yeah,
Microsoft and NYT got it.
We are cutting it close. But
this is how we pose it.
How do you guys think these giant mergers and acquisitions, or what do you think these giant mergers and acquisitions mean for the little guys, the indie studios that are already kind of bootstrapped these days? But now, instead of having to, they're continuing to have to bootstrap, but now their competition's even bigger, right? It's got even more money. Like because these studios aren't being bought and shut down. That's a big part of it. It's mergers and acquisitions, baby. Like these things are, they're getting bought and then continued, and now they have even fatter bankrolls. It's how your EAs get lazy, in my opinion. But what do you guys think this means for the indie games? Dodd, we'll start with you.
As I was saying earlier, I think that it puts you on a level where you have to be Innersloth or Yacht Club and just have something that hits out of the absolute park right out of the gate in order to be successful in the gaming industry at all. It makes it feel like, like acting, right? Except you're in New York, right? And your first place that you're trying to do is Broadway. Like, it's going to be really, really, really challenging, and only the really, really talented people are going to be able to get through with that. And I think that leaves a lot on the table for a lot of different companies that really have pushed some things. We're going to talk a little bit here in the top 10 indie games section about some games that really have pushed the concept of what is gaming, how games look, and things like that. And so I think it's really healthy to have a good, healthy indie game industry. And I think that this could be something that really, really stifles that.
100%. Savage, what about you? What do you think as far as, do you think it stifles innovation of these indie games, these giant mergers, these giant buyouts?
It's going to become the bottom dollar and not the quality of, 100%. If, we have the fortune of hindsight being 2020, because we look at all these games that, were small-time independent developed. You look at things look at Minecraft. Mm-hmm. This has turned into one of the largest cash cows specifically for Microsoft. I'm going to point that out too, because of Windows and Xbox exclusivity and all of the merch that came along with that. But think about how that started. It looks pretty similar to how it started. It's literally sharp edges, texture, and they move. That's reductive. Oh, but mechanically, that's what it is. That was an independent product that that set a lot of just really creative bars, but if you don't hit that threshold now, if you don't have the dream of being bought for millions of dollars or being licensed for millions of dollars by a large video game entertainment conglomerate, is there even a point? I'm being incredibly fatalistic here, and I'm gonna say no. I feel like we are very rapidly approaching the end of the advent of indie games, and it breaks my heart to say that. But I think the Stardew Valleys and the Spiritfarer and the Shovel Knight, I feel like if you don't get that game out in the next 3 to 5 years, you're never gonna get the someone's gonna outlive.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely going to be hard to anyway, as far as like getting those kind of games out, especially whenever the competition's going to be so tight and there's going to be so many of them out there with even more money than you. You getting it out alone is already hard enough, you know?
Exactly. And like, a shout out to Nintendo and Steam specifically as media service, because they still, even though they're not all perfect, they still individually boast the largest collection of independent titles available, like, for anyone. So, like, I'll say this much for Nintendo, is like, you can go up and down and back and forth with the quality of their own products, but they are one of the first, like, at least hardware systems to really pitch for all these indie games. The number of times they have all these, they have indie game events, developer events, like, only person who does that other than Steam is. So, like, shout out there. Because
I was gonna say Steam too. I was gonna piggyback off of you and be like, yeah, Steam. I think like it is. I found out recently it is $100 to upload a game on Steam. I was like, that is. I mean, that's crazily affordable. Like if you really lay it out, there's some. That's the reason why there's actually a lot of like kind of really crappy just asset clone games on Steam, is because like, you know, a lot of these kids and early game developers, some of them be very young and they'll just clone a bunch of assets and they'll throw a game together, and then some of them will actually be pretty creative though. Like I've seen some streamers play through them and everything, and so I mean,
like that's how we got games like Stardew Valley. That's how that's how we got Firewatch. We'll talk about all these later when we get to our top 10. But like, I guess I won't be. I'm concerned about the future of the video game industry based on how these mergers. I won't be really like doom worried until conversations start happening. Like, well, how much does someone want to buy? How much is Valve going to be? Then I will panic driven hit the button.
That will be.
I guess until that point, I'm just.
Yeah,
those would be some huge acquisitions. Just Valve alone, right? But I guess, what do you guys think this means for the remaining third-party developers? You know, you kind of mentioned one at the top with Ubisoft, right? Like I had to give it a Google real quick. They're still family-owned, technically, by the same group that kind of founded it and everything. And so it's one of those that is still an independently owned studio that's out there. And so, and there are a lot of them, right? That, you know, these that, you know, your Microsofts, your Sonys, they pay them to develop games for them or under the studio umbrella, or even for exclusives, right? And so
that's what Sea of Thieves did.
I think that's vital for franchises like Assassin's Creed.
I think Rare did get bought out by Microsoft.
They did. They got bought out years. That's how that's how Microsoft got all the.
Oh yeah.
Well,
sorry, what were you saying?
Yeah, as I was saying, that's huge for franchises like Assassin's Creed, right? Because that's a game that that's not exclusive to any franchise, right? It's not exclusive to Sony. It's not exclusive to Microsoft, and they really benefit from things like that, right? That has made something like those kind of games are the games that, you know, no one really fights about. I would worry about studios like Rocksteady getting picked up and bought by. You know, because again, you have to make a choice, right?
Your Rocksteadies, your rock stars,
Naughty Dog,
100%. Naughty Dog. Those would all be ones that I would be worried about. I
mean, Naughty Dog was bought. That retrospect. Naughty Dog was by Microsoft.
Well, can you imagine just the outrage of?
They have the license for all the Crash Bandicoot.
Can you imagine all the outrage of a Grand Theft Auto being a console exclusive?
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
That would be insane.
Alas, in PC, they could never.
People would riot. Like I think like they would. Like we would literally get like some kind of classic, some riots. You know. And it used to be Saks. I mean, Saks is 100% right. It used to be PlayStation. I want to say, what was it? Was it Vice City or Grand Theft Auto 3 was the first one they released on I was surprised.
I thought it was Grand Theft Auto 5. I was pretty sure that it was. I thought that before that it was all Sony exclusive.
San Andreas, thanks, Saks.
Yeah, we're really excited when Grand Theft Auto 4 comes out, but
LOL.
Yeah.
But I can't. They all can't.
One of the big questions, and I think it's all been hanging there this entire time, is Microsoft too powerful? Or is any single, I guess, one of the big guys, is Sony too strong? Who's too strong here now?
They both are. Rip them up, split them up, break them up.
Microsoft is rapidly approaching, in that if they see something, they can take an intellectual property that's established for 50 plus years, makes their own millions and billions of dollars, and literally just sit in a boardroom somewhere with a litigator, an arbitrator, and a checkbook, and it's theirs. Like, they're getting to that level, and I feel like the purchase, or excuse me, position of Activision Blizzard, like, that serves one purposes. A frightening reminder how much as, and B, there's probably some corporate cronyism involved in there, because that purchase is not about actual products for Blizzard. That purchase was about sweeping reputation. I'll die on that. But, like, Microsoft has enough money to take something as big as the creators of Overwatch and WoW and just say, mine now.
Yeah, we'll take that. But, you know, I mean, you flip it, though, and it happens in the entertainment industry all the time. If you look at things like games as an entertainment outlet, you know, we saw this with Marvel and Disney. We saw this with Star Wars and Disney. We saw this with ESPN and Disney. We saw this with
National Geographic and Disney.
Geographic. Oh my God, everything's owned by Disney. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, this consolidation does happen a lot, and I think Microsoft is getting to the level where it's getting scary. I think Sony is too. I think honestly, there needs to be, and I think it gets hard because obviously this is what our governments are supposed to do, but a lot of these companies aren't just American companies. Like, you can't just tell Sony specifically how to run everything. You know what I mean? At least we can't necessarily in the States 100%, as much as we would think we could. You
certainly can't tell them how to make a Spider-Man movie. But
and Sony doesn't even have enough money. But no, I mean, Microsoft is a pretty big beast, and the fact that they are just throwing their weight around in the gaming industry, it's pretty interesting to see what's going to happen with it. And you know, I think me personally, I do believe we've got to see somebody. We got to see a Bernie. We got to see somebody come in and break up the big banks, baby. You know, we got to break them up, like Dodd said. But then I don't know if that happens. I think at the end of the day, at least we got to incentivize the small gaming, the small indie game developers, you know. And
I would rather be a field of just tiny developers all doing their own little weird things, competing in their own ways. Because then that's when you get the weird stuff. That's when we get things that are really experimental. That's when we get things that are really fun. And I think that otherwise, Jake, honestly, you just get more Pokemon. You get more of exactly what you fucking hate with Pokemon. That's the problem. You can get something that'll be sold to you for $60 and it'll be a drastic reduce in the quality that you've been expecting because they fucking can. They're the only one that makes it.
That's a great example because at one point we had Digimon, we had Monster Rancher, we had so many
Monster
competitors.
Rancher was so good.
I love Monster Rancher. If you're talking about raising monsters, let me get off on a tangent real quick. If you're talking about raising the monsters, Monster Rancher was the superior game.
You had to defeat those motherfuckers. You had to
defeat them. They died. That taught me as a child about, like, permanence. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of the craziest things in Pokemon. You know, like, oh, they fainted. You take them to a Chauncey, and it's just boop, 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 and they're good. In Monster Rancher, they're like, they're like, hey, you gotta bury him. You know, like, and then a guy comes along and goes, hey, do you want to pay extra money for a shrine? And you're looking at your cash like, man, I don't really have the reserves, but like, I would feel like an asshole if I don't.
Fucking
you know,
funeral for your Pokemon.
Yes, they hold one. Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, if you've never played Monster Rancher, it got ported to Switch recently. It's kind of brutal, but it's fun. But like at the same time, there was a lot of competition back then, and Pokemon won so early that I think that's why like it, you know, kind of holds that right now. And competition is just good for the industry. I think everybody here can agree with that, and I think that's where these big mergers, acquisitions, and everything, they start to get scary from a gamer's perspective, because we're just looking at it like, what's going to happen, you know, to the future? What's going to happen? Are we going to get the same shit shoved down our throat all the time? What's going to happen to our favorite indie games? Are these guys not going to be able to do what they want to do anymore because they're just going to get pushed out? And so I think, honestly, though, it is a great transition to our top Zen this week, which was voted on by you, the Nerd Herd. So our top Zen is the top 10.
Don't get mad at anyone but yourself.
Yeah, so if you don't like them, it's on you guys. Join the Discord and vote in the polls, vote in everything that we send out, or you can't complain. What's the whole thing? If you don't vote, you can't complain, right? And so welcome to the top Zen, though. This is the portion of the show where we break down the top 10s of things. This week, we asked you, the Nerd Herd, to vote for your favorite indie game, so tonight, we're getting indie with it. Doodle, do that motherfucking dandy. Nice. I think we're actually going to run another poll where our Geeklife fan-led polls, the last hope for democracy. So, bang. But we are kicking it off with a classic this week at number 10, The Stanley Parable. The Stanley Parable, if you don't know, is a avant-garde, I think I say that right, interactive drama designed and written by developers Davey Worden and William Pugh. The game carries themes such as a choice in video games, the relationship between a game creator and player, and the predestination / fate and what that kind of means for us all in our heads and other words for heads that I can't think of right now. But the game was originally released in July 31st of 2011 as a free modification for Half-Life 2. Later, it got its own stand release game that included new story elements and updated graphics. The player guides a silent protagonist named Stanley alongside narration by a British actor named Kevin Brightwing. As the story progresses, the player is confronted with diverging pathways. The player may contradict the narrator's directions, which, if disobeyed, will then be incorporated into the story depending on the choices made. The player will encounter different endings before the game restarts to the beginning. It's a classic choice-style game, and definitely one worth playing if you're into trippy choice games, and if you're into choice games in general, which I always have been. That's why I've loved my Mass Effects and my Fallouts and everything. I want to feel like I'm actually doing something in a video game, you know what I mean? And so that's why number 10, The Stanley Parable, had to make it on this list. But I think, well, guys, have either of you ever got to play The Stanley Parable?
I have not, but it's got big like Portal vibes from what I can tell.
Yeah, a little bit.
You know, it's got, at least in like the narrative and like, you know, having narration stuff like that. It's definitely something I'd be interested in checking out.
No, 100%. Well, moving right along, Savage, I believe you got number 9 for us. Give the people number 9
I
on.
do. Coming in at number 9, the good old-fashioned upside down 6. We have Ori and the Blind Forest, or Ori and the Blind Forest. I've never heard it pronounced or written. Either way, personally a huge favorite of mine. Beautiful artwork I've ever seen. Ori and the Blind Forest is a platform Metroidvania-style game developed by Moon Studios, Microsoft. Players control of Ori, a small white spirit, and Sane, the light forest spirit tree. Players are tasked to move between platforms and solve puzzles. Absolutely singular. It features a save system called Soul Links, which allows players to save their progress will with limited resources, and an upgrade system durability game. Developed by Moon Studios, a collective organization without a set organization. They are an entirely intellectual hive mind studio. Story was inspired by things like The Lion King and The Giant, while some of the gameplay elements were inspired by Rayman and Metroid franchise. With a dash of Castlevania in there too. Upon release, the game received critical acclaim, with players praising the gameplay, direction, story, action sequences, musical score, environmental design. Dubbed as one of the best titles at representing art in video games. As someone who played it and likes watching other people play it repeatedly on stream, it's one of the most visually and aesthetically and audibly pleasing games I've ever had the pleasure of playing. Jake, have y'all had the chance to check it out?
I have watched somebody play this, and I play a lot of it, and I feel like it's a very visually appealing game for sure. And I personally, platformers are not my favorite, but as far as platformers go, if there's one out that I was interested in trying, it probably would be this one because of how visually different it is and how just entertaining and fun people have said that it is.
Yeah, I've had a chance to dive in on this one. It's a lot of fun. It's super beautiful. It's honestly one of the prettiest platform kind of games like that I've played. And the gameplay is super fun. And I think even you kind of touched on Savage, it's one of those kind of last few titles that represent art in video games. You know, when you play this game, you're like, this is an art form. Like, they're making fucking art here.
You can
You
take
know?
a screenshot of any scene in the game, cinematic or otherwise, and it looks like a portrait.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah. No, it's one of
stunning.
those. It's
Absolutely.
crazy what they can do in such a small screen and everything. It's almost it's way more vivid and everything than this game, of course. But it does remind me a little bit of like if I had to pick a game that a lot of people played that's a little bit newer, Hollow Knight. You know.
Very similar vibe. 100%. Played them both, loved them both.
And so, but moving right on to number 8 on this week's countdown, Dodd, what do we have for number 8?
Well, number 8 on our list of top 10 indie games voted on by you is Firewatch. Firewatch is an adventure game developed by Campo Santo and published by the developer in partnership with Panic. The story follows a fire lookout named Henry in the Shoshone National Forest, a year after the Yellowstone fires of 1988. A month after his first day at work, strange things begin to appear, and his supervisor, Delilah, which connects him to a conspiracy mystery that happened years ago. Henry interacts with Delilah using a walkie-talkie, with the player choosing from dialogue options to communicate. The exchanges with Delilah inform the process by which the relationship is developed, and the game was directed by Ollie Moss and Sean Veneman, written by Chris Ramio, Jake Rodkin. Moss and Veneman produced by Gabe McGill and artist Jane. The game's environment draws inspiration from New Deal advertisements by the National Park Service and field research conducted by the Yosemite National Park. It has generally positive reviews and earning praises for its story, characters, dialogue, and visual style. However, the presence of technical issues and the game's ending were both subjects of criticism. Firewatch still snagged the best indie game of 2016 as in the Golden Joysticks Awards. And what a year to win an award at all. Yeah.
It sounds like Pickley in chat has a lot of playthroughs on this game. So if you guys are interested in Firewatch, definitely go check out his stream or their stream. And, you know, just get a look of it. I love the art style on this game. And I mean, shout out also to Kev for these amazing top Zen images this week. We actually get to look at the games. I know, Dodd, this was your idea as well. Just fucking creativity coming together and just having beautiful babies. And so...
Yeah, 100%. It gives you a little bit of...
Firewatch, though, sounds beautiful. Sounds like an awesome game. I mean, Joystick Award for the best indie game, too, so it had to make the list, it sounds.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful story. Like, it's you can't... it's one of those games you talk about the story really at all without starting to give away certain of it, and you have to appreciate it.
Yeah, that is always like impressive whenever you can make a story so good it's hard to even talk about because you don't want to give the spoilers, you know. Awesome.
Visually, it's such a sell too, and it's got a really cool vibe. So I'm glad that to see it make the countdown.
Well, speaking of games with really cool vibes, this next one at number 7 definitely has some fucking vibes to it. Savage, give the people number 7 on this week's countdown. What do you got there?
Number 7, we have Limbo, a fun little independent title, came out in the early 2010s, I believe, 2010, 2000, remember. Limbo is a puzzle platform game established by independent studio Playdead and originally published by Game Studios for the 6th. That's any indication. Limbo is a 2D side-scroller incorporating a physics system that governs environmental objects and the player character. The player guides an unnamed boy through dangerous environments, traps, systems. The developer built the game's puzzles expecting the player to fail before finding the correct solution. Playdead called this style of play trial and death, soul-oriented, as me and Jake are very familiar with right now, and used gruesome imagery for the boy's deaths to steer the player clear from unworkable scenes. The game is presented in black and white tones. It's literally all in shadow.
Yeah.
Using lighting, film grain effects, minimal ambient sounds to create a very eerie atmosphere, often associated with the genre. It's a game that as you play through it, it feels very isolated, both like sensorially and you feel like. Journalist plays the dark presentation, describing the work as comparable to film noir and expressionism. Based on its aesthetics, reviewers classified Limbo as an example of video games as an art form. Something we're continuing to see in a lot of these titles is just like, you know, people still care a lot about not how good your game looks, how it like as a whole. Limbo received a critical acclaim, but its minimal story polarized critics. Some critics found it the open-ended work to have a deeper meaning that tied well with the game's mechanics. Others believe the lack of significant plot and abrupt ending attracted the game. A common point of criticism from reviewers was the high cost of the game relative to its short length. Might deter players from purchasing the title, but proves that the length was ideal. It has been listed as some of the greatest time in the collection, and you can definitely see as you play through it where it would later inspire things, Littlest Nightmares and Hollow Knight, with a lot of its aesthetic choices and pretty dark storytelling. Decided to dive that deeply. That was really hard to say. Have either of you guys had the chance to check this one out? This is not one I've played personally, but I was aware of as an inspiration.
I'm in the same boat as you. I know by proxy. I've definitely seen it played. I've actually watched a few streams of it on Twitch.
I have too.
And it's one of those that, like, I mean, when you said Little Nightmares, I think I watched somebody play this and then watched them play Little Nightmares and was just like, is this in the same universe? Like, what's kind of going on? Because they're very similar in a lot of aspects. But no, it's a gorgeous game.
Yeah,
even though it's black and white, that noir feel is just like, whoo.
Yeah, like I said, this is one of those games where I've played a lot of similar genre games as far as like side-scrolling platforms go, and seeing Limbo, I'm like, they all aesthetically, mechanically, environment. This started a lot, and that's really cool. Definitely why it's on the
100%. We need to stop doing that.
God damn it, Dodson.
100%. There's got to be one where it's only 90.
No, I'm just gonna go 1,000%.
All the time.
500%.
That's not 99%.
Yeah.
Well, 100% number 6 in this week's countdown is Untitled Goose Game, and it's fun. I'll take that one.
Goose Game. I like that version better. The Untitled.
Untitled. Yeah. My bad. Untitled Goose Game. It's not entitled to shit, bro. It's
he's just walking around being very polite to people.
It's the Untitled Goose Game. Untitled Goose Game is a 2019 puzzle stealth game developed by House, which another great game, or great name. Jeez. Right. And published by Panic. Players control a goose who bothers the inhabitants of an English village. The player must use the goose's ability to manipulate objects and non-player characters to complete objectives. Untitled Goose Game originated from a stock photograph of a goose that a House employee posted in the company's internal communications, Slack. This sparked a conversation about geese. The team put the idea aside for a few months until they realized that it had potential to be a fun game. Inspired by Mario 64 and the Hitman series, which talk about a combination, House worked on combining stealth mechanics with a lack of violence to create a humorous in-game scenarios. The game's unusual name come from a last-minute decision in preparing the title as an entry for game festivals, and it just stuck. Untitled Goose Game received positive reviews, with critics praising its gameplay, the humor, the title. DICE gave it Game of the Year, among other accolades. By the end of 2019, it had sold more than 1 million copies, and this game was huge. It was all over the place. If you were alive in 2019, which I think everybody here was, at least I hope so. You heard about this game. It was everywhere. It blew up because of just how crazy it was as far as like the idea of it. Like, you got to play this goose that was just fucking with people, and it was great. If you've ever encountered a goose, then this game nailed what it was like to be a goose. They're assholes.
If you've ever encountered a goose, sorry to interrupt here, but if you've ever encountered a goose, this game genre very quickly shifts to survival.
Yeah, it's a survival horror, exactly. But I love the fact that you get to play the monster.
Yes.
But have any of you guys got to play Untitled Goose Game, and what did you think about it?
No, but I watched Pickley. Yeah. So, I mean, I've definitely been involved in an Untitled Goose Game stream before, and seen the shenanigans, and that's exactly what it is. Shenanigans.
It is.
Probably in the most shenanigans of ways, right?
Very shenanigan-y game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, full of shenanigans. What about you, Savage?
I have played and watched the game. I did, if I'm being completely honest, had a lot more fun watching the game itself. But I liked how it essentially a puzzle game, but it got to incorporate mechanic games that I love stealth mechanics games.
Yeah.
However, I feel like a lot of the games are really used to about stealth mechanics, like Splinter Cell, things, Metal Gear Solid, like that era of game has passed. These game franchises have shifted way more into like military action perspective, and so anytime I see a game that really likes to necessitate the use of stealth mechanics over outright combat, I jump. I love that. This game put a really, really enjoyable spin on it, also because I do have childhood trauma of being attacked by my geese.
Geese, man.
And
geese, they don't fuck around. They don't fuck around.
do you know they have teeth? Geese have teeth.
Yeah. No, dude, I've
teeth.
encountered gooses. All right, like
Geese.
they are up here. I mean, whatever. Don't buy into Webster's bullshit. All right.
Every time you say geese, Webster gets more money.
I mean,
no, like,
we
have them up here in Virginia. They'll stop traffic, bro. Like they'll completely like they'll try to cross the road, and you'll just have to wait, and there's nothing you can do. You're not getting out of your car.
That's because the geese run.
Why did the goose cross the road? Doesn't matter. Your day's
humans.
ruined.
But it's really the geese.
Exactly. But these guys, this game in general, it was a lot of fun. I got to play it. It's funny, Savage, you even mentioned that. My fiance, she kind of felt the same way as far as like it was more fun to watch you play it than to play it. Like just because like watching somebody else go through the motions and everything. Because when you're actually playing it, you're kind of like in the zone of like doing the stealth and everything. But when you're watching it, you're just getting to watch a goose fuck with people, and that's just I think the beautiful part of it.
There's a lot of entertainment value. Surprising amount.
It really is. That's why I'm really interested in that new game where you get to be a cat. I love being animals in games. That shit's fun to me. But I digress. Speaking of being animals, let's move right into being fucking cups. Number 5 on this week's countdown is Cuphead. Cuphead, also known as Cuphead Don't Deal with the Devil, or Do, whatever, I'm not your father, is a 2017 run-and-gun video game developed by the publisher by Studio MDHR. It was inspired by the rubber hose style from the golden age of American animation and the submersive and surrealist qualities of works of Walt Disney Animation Studios. And you can kind of tell that right in this artwork right here. Like it's always kind of had that very old school, like Steamboat Willie vibe to it, but with like a run and gun shoot 'em up. You know what I mean? One of the two players control. Yeah, I know, right? One of the two players control protagonist Cuphead and his brother Mugman, very creative names, to fight through several levels that accumulate to a boss fight in order to repay their debt to the devil. Praised for its art style, gameplay, soundtrack, and difficulty, because trust me, it's there. It was a critical and commercial success, winning several awards with more than 6 million copies sold. It's even got a Netflix animated series, The Cuphead Show, which premiered earlier this month, and an expansion title, The Delicious Last Course, that is scheduled to release in June 2022. So later this year, actually this summer, really coming up, actually. I didn't even know the sequel was that close. But I just got to dive into the show. I've got to play Cuphead. It's a great game. I can totally see why it's at number 5 here. It's a hella fun indie game. Have either of you guys got a chance to play Cuphead? If so, do you think it deserves to be in the top 5?
Oh yeah, it's one of those that absolutely should be here. And shout out, thank you for the follow, Shadow Ops TV.
Oh shit! Yeah, thanks for the follow.
Yeah, appreciate
Shadow.
that.
Thanks for
but yeah, so I think that this is one that absolutely deserves to be on this countdown. Cuphead has been known for years. Its difficulty was where is praised from first, but its art style I think is truly unique. And I'm honestly really enjoying the show right now. Right, it's funny, it's zany, it's episodic, so I don't have to really worry about what's happening from show to show. But yeah, it's been really fun. So I'm really glad to see Cuphead make it, and I think that it really earned its spot here at number 5. What do you think, Savage?
I wonderfully enjoyed the show. I watched that start to single sitting with zero problem. I also am a huge fan of the game, as I am powerfully nostalgic towards rubber hosing. That animation style took so much work and was such a foundational important for animation today. To see that, to call it an homage doesn't feel like that does it justice, because this is not only a revisitation of that animation style, but it embraces it for what it is and it does an amazing job. And I cannot talk about that enough. But also, like, y'all, it's hard. It is so difficult. I have over 750 hours clocked in Dark Souls alone. Dark Souls 3 was not as hard as the game. Like, this game
that makes me feel better about Elden Ring then, because I gave Cuphead a run for it, but it is a very hard game.
So good, and I very much enjoy it. But honestly, to this day, I still have not made it past like the third world. Like, it's poof.
Have you did you solo or 2-player?
I tried soloing it because I didn't have a friend.
I'm gonna be honest with you, and this may not make you feel better. Soloing, it's easier.
But
I was gonna say, I tried doing it duo, and that was hard as hell.
That's it. They actually, the developers even confirmed it. When you're playing as a duo, they lower each person's attack power. That way, it kind of levels out, because if they had both of you with the max attack power, you would just run through bosses, and so they actually lower each player's attack power. So if you're not both equally the same skill level, someone's going to be dying a little bit more, someone's going to have less attack power. It's a whole like combination of like, if you're not going to carry, then you're going to get screwed. You know what I mean? Like if you're playing with somebody. And I'm telling you, it's harder with 2 players, much easier to solo.
I mean, not going to mention anybody being called out in chat right now.
For sure. Certainly not Littlest Nelly, for sure.
But speaking of games that involve 2, and it's not It Takes Two, which I am surprised is, actually,
there's a few honorable mentions we'll need to get.
I don't want to give any spoilers, but I just kind of had a little mini like, what the fuck? But anyway, number 4 on this week's list. Dodd, what is number 4? I'm unpacking something right now, so.
Yeah, that is a lot to unpack, and that's why number 4 on our list is Unpacking. Unpacking is a puzzle video game by Australian company Witchbeam and published by a Humble Bundle for Microsoft Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox One. The game is divided into stages named by the years in which they take place, starting in 1997 and jumping periodically to 2018. The game in each stage comprises of unpacking a female character's possessions from the boxes into a new dwelling, representing significant life events. The player is tasked with fitting each unpacked item into a living space, learning the protagonist's life story through her items and the place that she lives. Unpacking in a high-res pixel art style and sound design includes over 1,400 Foley effects, with multiple pickups and placement sound effects unique to each item. To be honest, guys, I never played Unpacking, and I am amazed to see that there is a game that does this and that makes money doing this, because I fucking hate moving, and I can't believe that there's anybody out there that gets any satisfaction out of this.
I pay people money to literally pack and unpack for me. Like I would rather do that, like, because it's just, I hate packing, unpacking, moving in general. But I get it's compartmentalization, I think, is what.
That's it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, chat, because I know Nelly plays it. Is it the compartmentalism of it? You know, that's what I gotta say. I guess that's what it is. Savage, it sounds like you've played it though.
I feel like
I have not played it, but I have opinions on packing.
Okay. You're like, I have not played it, but I love sorting.
I do. Like, I am moving here. Frankly, like, being able to like immediately like compartmentalize all of my possessions, like, it therapeutically translates to organizing my thoughts, and like that's a healthy therapeutic practice. But also, I'm still hiring movers because I don't want to fuck shit. I'm not fitting.
Nelly said, I love unpacking digitally. So, just to clarify, it's only in the game.
Yeah.
But, awesome. Well, number 4, Unpacking. Sounds like a fun one. But that's probably not as fun as number 3 on this list, or at least you would think that's how list would work. Who's number 3 on this list, though, Savage? Hit us up with number 3 on the best indie games.
Number 3 is, I'm going to go ahead and say, is one I have played and one very, very thoroughly enjoyed. Number 3, we have Shovel Knight. Shovel Knight is a 2D side-scrolling game developed and published by Yacht Club Games. Development actually fully crowdfunded on Kickstarter. We mentioned this earlier when we were talking about acquisitions, but Shovel Knight is inspired by like some of the earliest generations of gameplay and graphic platformer games, dating all the way back to the Nintendo. Looking at the art style, which you can kind of see on the little fly-up window next to me, definitely feels and looks that way, but it was done so very. The game has received massive amounts of critical acclaim awards. It's continually releasing campaigns and more improvements to the story. And the game has now adopted the retro Couple of Hope. Game was released in December of 2019. Shovel Knight Treasure Trove, which included 3 other campaigns: Plague of Shadows, Spectre of Torment, and King of Cards, along with a multiplayer fighting game called Showdown.
Hell yeah!
For fun, it gives you big classic joust. You don't know what joust is originally. It's like, but it's really seminal in video game development. One thing that's not explicitly